We have one bill on the agenda today. Is there any objection to limiting public testimony to 2 minutes per witness? If not, public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes. Green light means to begin your testimony. You will have 2 minutes. Yellow light means you have 1 minute left, and the red means please wrap up your last sentence as time has expired. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 1325 and recognizes its Senate sponsor, Senator Perry, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. It is Hemp Day as opposed to Hump Day tomorrow. It has been a long time coming. Why are y'all not laughing, man? Come on, it's cheap. There you go.
He worked real hard on that joke.
This is good stuff, man. I will tell you, this has been in the making of probably 2 to 3 sessions. The state of Texas was waiting on federal approval. We got that over the interim, opening the door up for, I think, something that's going to be a game changer, hopefully for our ag, but it's probably generally as commerce goes in the state of Texas, we will be a little bit different and better for it. Specifically, House Bill 1325 by Representative Tracy King. The bill was supported unanimously in the House and Ag Committee, had over 60 individuals registered to testify in support and none registered in opposition. House Bill 1325 passed the House floor 144-0. December of 2018, President Trump signed the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill, which updated the Agricultural Marketing Act of 1946 to legalize hemp production and remove hemp from the purview of the U.S. drug laws. Members, we worked with interested stakeholder groups, Senate District 28 farmers, state agencies, Representative Tracy King, to develop legislation to provide our farmers a new agricultural commodity to produce. The bill will allow Texas Department of Agriculture to have primary regulatory authority over hemp production through a USDA-approved plan. Texas will be required to consult with the Governor and Attorney General to develop a plan to submit to USDA for approval. Legalized hemp as defined by the Farm Bill may not exceed THC concentration of 0.3%. 0.3%. Due to its low THC content, hemp does not possess the ability to create a psychoactive or intoxicating effect like recreational marijuana, which is traditionally exceeds a concentration of 10% of THC. Hemp has thousands of uses and can be broken down into multiple commodities like seeds, oils, and fibers and used for various applications: agricultural, automotive, construction, food and beverage, furniture, paper, cosmetic, and textiles. End products can be found in Texas consumer retail, including H-E-B and other grocery stores and their nutritional and beauty product-focused retailers. Farm Bill allows for states to submit a plan to USDA for approval of local production. The U.S. Farm Bill also provides hemp farmers with the ability to obtain research grants and crop insurance and requires random inspections to ensure hemp produced is within the THC limits. Because of the Farm Bill, hemp is now permitted interstate commerce product. There are hundreds of products on Texas retailer shelves, all of which have been produced outside the state of Texas. Questions have been raised regarding the oversight of these products since these products have grown and produced and processed outside the state. The Texas Department of Health and Human Services have little oversight over such products. The bill would provide DSHS the appropriate oversight of the processing of these products if the product enters the consumption product space, including cosmetic and beauty products, if they are produced within the state. Mr. Chairman, I do have a sub.
Senator Rodriguez sends up to committee sub HB 1325 and recognizes Senator Perry to explain the differences.
I need to qualify it first. This bill's been in a working process for several, well, like I say, 2 sessions, and Representative King did a great job of incorporating changes that address concerns with the Lieutenant Governor's Office, AG, and DPS, pretty much all stakeholder groups. When it came over, there was a few additional concerns raised as the hearing process occurred through the House. The committee substitute for House Bill 1325 added the fee cap back in, but allows to the Department of Agriculture. But Department of Agriculture can still exceed those cap with the comptroller's approval. Allows the harvest to happen upon sample collection. The producer can harvest, but can't move or process the crop until the tests are finalized. Shipping manifest is not a can't search my load pass. Anyone hauling lawful hemp is subject to roadside stops and checks. If a person tests hot, they are fined and are subject to increased random inspections with TDA. If a local or county game warden suspects a violation, they can refer that suspicion to the TDA, DPS, or the AG. Haulers originating from outside the state will need proof that the hemp that they are handling has been grown under the U.S. Farm Bill, including information on the originating source and destination document, and cannot be commingled with other products. DISH and DPS, DSHS and DPS shall adopt policies processing for random testing of CBD oils at various retail and other establishments selling, distributing, or using CBD oil to ensure that CBD oil does not contain harmful ingredients and is produced in compliance with the state and federal laws. Exempts teacup, Texas Compassionate Use Program. If a license holder does not have a violation in state or federal law, then a license holder may renew by paying a fee but does not need to comply with the application process again. Is a testing laboratory falsifies this document, it's a third-degree felony that would constitute a tampering or government record offense. If a retail store is going to sell CBD oil, they are required to have a retail permit issued through dishes, and smokable sales are and will be banned. Members and people, this has been vetted a long time, but what this does not do is go down the road anywhere near, in fact, on the contrary, of legalizing marijuana. I think that's an important point that people continue to go down. I think that it's probably going to be the most restrictive hemp bill in the country. I think those that have hemp laws on the books will look to Texas and probably modify some of their existing. Those that are considering it, I think it'll become a model. I think it addresses pretty much all of the areas of concerns. Obviously, as we move through this process and growers begin to bring crops to the processors and processors be taking it to the retail markets, we may address or find that we were overzealous, and we may find that we were still lacking in some of those concerns. But I think it strikes a good balance between the starting point and where we're at today to get it going into this market. So with that, I'd be glad to take questions.
Okay. Members, any questions?
We have resource witnesses from TDA and or the AG.
Dan Hunter is here from TDA. So we need to adopt a substitute. Senator Rodriguez moves adoption of the committee substitute. Is there any objection? Substitute is adopted. Okay, and Senator Rodriguez, you had a question?
Yes, I have just a few questions, Mr. Chairman, members. I know that there's other states that have already adopted rules. What other states have done this, that adopted rules and regulations?
As of my last data point, I think there was 30 states that currently have hemp in production or on the laws or considering moving into that. Remember, the USDA will give us a plan if we don't adopt our plan. Texas chose to do its plan, and I think rightfully so, to be in control of that process. But it still has to be vetted through USDA. Once this plan is voted out, the statute's voted out, USDA will bless the plan. We don't anticipate any problems, but they still have to get their approval.
On potential violations, I understand that under the federal statute, they could have 3 strikes and you're out. Is that correct?
You're 3 strikes and you're out under USDA. Under this particular committee substitute, 3 strikes and you get a 5-year window if you have those violations. But if you are intentionally growing hot crops, i.e. above the 0.3, and it can be supported that you had other intentions, you go to jail.
Mm-hmm. And on those 3 strikes, does that include serious violations or minimal violations? Or
the 3 strikes, because here's the science of it. It may be best for someone that's more biology driven, but you don't control your growing environment. So due to the heat, due to the lack of water, more water, those kind of environmental factors can influence that THC content. I am told that you can go out and trim the top of the plants off and actually reduce the THC content. But if you're a habitual offender and if you are caught once, you will be subject to more inspections. But if it's one of those areas where you have to do a test 20 days out from harvest, kind of test the THC at that point to be able to pull it back down through the growing process. But at the end of the day, if it's one of those inadvertent growing, that it just got a little above the level, then there's remedies in process to allow the grower to pull it back down. But if you're continually having that problem, then you're going to be in trouble with the law.
Is there an appeal process for companies that get charged with violations?
Post-harvest test, so there's a secondary level of testing, and if you fail that, then that would be your appeal process. If you pass that, then you can go back into production. So you can get another test.
I see. How about training for law enforcement to be able to document? Is there going to be training provided?
It's my understanding that, and I don't know that it exists in full force today, but there will be kits to be able to test loads that are pretty much just dip plant in certain chemical reactions occur. So we'll have those probably ultimately provided to our DPS. The manifest process of where we're moving product inside the state and then coming in from out of state is pretty prescriptive on what it allows our DPS guys to do, pretty much anything they need to do. So I think the training will probably be minimum, and when those tests become kind of part of the DPS process or whoever in law enforcement that's got the ability to test that, those should be out there to where we can hopefully mitigate any kind of intrusive into a legitimate hemp operation.
One last question. One of the provisions in the bill is for law enforcement to call a 1-800 number if they want to check whether the manifest of the transportation of the hemp product is in order and all that. It seems to me that another way of doing it more efficiently would be to just incorporate or to integrate, I guess is a word, the shipping documentation with the DPS's TLETS program, which is, of course, the system through which law enforcement very easily checks, for different types of information. I'm wondering if that might be something you might consider, as an amendment on the floor.
I think what we've left it up is for rules to be promulgated. That's a great suggestion. The manifest is supposed to have that contact information, that identifiable information, so it shouldn't be too much of a burden for the officer out there in the field. At the same time, that's a great suggestion, and as TDA goes through the process, they're familiar with hauling product all over the state, so whatever processes are currently engaged, I would assume they would kind of adopt those, especially when you're talking to a lot of different trucking groups around the country that'll be bringing product in and out of the state, and that's a good thing.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
I have some questions.
Okay.
TDA.
TDA, okay. We've got
Is law
two,
enforcement here of
got-
any sort, DPS or
got Stephen
AG?
Paul.
Stephen Paul from the Department of State Health Services. It's also here.
Can you speak up? Where'd you
Come on
where you
up, please.
I'm Dan Hunter, Assistant Commissioner at the Texas Department of Agriculture.
Great. So this bill requires TDA to adopt rules for the production of hemp and hemp products that would then be ratified or approved by U.S. Secretary of Agriculture within 90 days and then revised until approved. So y'all would be the primary regulatory agency for hemp production.
Correct.
And hemp would be a legalized product, obviously. Marijuana is a controlled substance.
Yes, sir.
And so there's some ambiguity, at least in my mind, about what percentage over the limit of THC, how y'all would go about affecting your obligation to allow for hemp, but at the same time, what do you do in a case in which you have as Senator Perry said, a hot crop, one that what are your parameters you look for? Have y'all put any thought into those rules and how you'd work with law enforcement and the delineation between a legal crop that just is inadvertently hot versus a controlled substance crop?
Yes, sir, Senator, we have. And to follow up on Senator Perry's comments with regards to the outline of the Farm Bill, one of the things that we've been given is guidelines based upon what is going to come under the 2018 Farm Bill. Currently, what they're operating under, and many of the rules he visited about, was they're still operating for hemp production under the 2014 Farm Bill, which allowed those states who already had permits and the ability to either do it under a research basis or under a permit basis to go ahead and grow. You had, as he mentioned, 30-plus states which are already doing that. The good part about that is the playbook's pretty much already been written. So the testing issues, so right now the way that the law is specifically written is anything over 0.03 of THC is not a legal crop. Okay, so there's multiple testing opportunities. The fortunate part about this, and I think the thing that as we look at this and we look at towards what other states are doing, is that you have certain states which are heavily into hemp production. Kentucky's been the leader on that. That's why Senator McConnell, the majority leader in the Senate, was probably one of the big proponents of this. But you also have almost, like I said, 30-plus states which have been doing that. The good part about this is, and what we're hearing from USDA as we talk with them, as we begin to look at this, is the thing that they want more than anything is consistency across state lines. They want every state to be able to abide by the rules on a fair and even basis. They're going to give us the guidelines and the format to follow with regards to hemp production, because they have the same concerns, because they still, even though it's decriminalized on the federal level, of course we still have to decriminalize it for it to be grown here in the state. However, it can currently be sold. So the reality of this is making sure that what we're growing is a legal crop under federal guidelines. And that's what we're going to be following. That's what the bill that Senator Perry and Chairman King have laid out with regards to this, is that we be able to have this not only in a legal aspect, but also one that allows us to put Texas products on Texas shelves. The question you're really facing today is, are you going to allow Texas products or Texas hemp to be grown? Because the product is already going to be allowed to be on the shelves.
My question was, how do you differentiate a hot crop that is
Sure.
legally produced versus one that is illegally a controlled substance and meant for production as marijuana? How are you going to, as an agency, delineate that and potentially refer to the proper jurisdiction if you determine that it is a hot crop, or not a hot crop, but an actual controlled substance?
Yes, sir, Senator. So the way that it is currently done under the current guidelines that states are operating under is that they go in and test 20 days ahead of prior to harvest whether or not that crop is above the 0.03. If it is,
They have to be registered as a hemp producer?
Yes, sir. So what most states do is that they grant permits. Producers apply generally in the fall, maybe in the winter, with regards to if they intend or want to plant hemp in the next crop year. They have to not only have a permit, but they have to have a permit in order to access seed. Once they're able to access seed, then they GPS the property in which that product is being grown. And then anytime, and even under Senator Perry's bill, there's random testing that's available, so we can go out and test that at any time. There are testing laboratories, certified laboratories that follow national standards that will be used to test that crop.
A producer that is legally growing hemp that has some tests that are out of range.
Yes, sir.
There's a fee structure, but not actual criminalization of that, up to $5,000 or $10,000, I think, in the bill. So that's the maximum. That could be seen as the cost of doing business if I was producing marijuana. So how do you differentiate? I mean, there's 3 strikes and you're out.
You destroy the crop.
But I'm a supporter of the bill and I'm a co-author of it. I'm just getting to the particulars of how in Texas do we actually regulate it?
I would say it this way, and I'm, again, not a biologist, but if you're growing 10% or above and you get called on that first, you may, say, hey, I didn't know, or I was inadvertent. If you go get checked again and you're 10% or above, it's a pretty clear indicator that you probably have nefarious other agendas, because to get to that level, you've got to be deliberately forcing that hand.
Cultivating
It's not going to go, and my understanding is growers are not going to get a 10% crop without a deliberate attempt to get it to 10 and above. That 0.3 to 0.1 or to 1 is pretty narrow. And what we've seen in Canada, I think there was a deal where a guy had a 0.9 come up, and he got in trouble because they didn't have a remedy and they didn't have a first strikes, and they didn't. But it comes back to the quality of the seed. If you're certifying the seed, and seed's got to be certain vendors that have that certification of seed, so you start at the seed level, go up. But you can't get to that 10 and above without a lot of effort to make sure that happens. So, and I think that our TDA groups will know if it's habitually a problem 1 or 2 times in a row, 2 times in a row, they're probably going to refer you to DPS and those other authorities where they can have a conversation. So,
The co-jurisdiction of that, thank you, Senator, regarding law enforcement of any type, DEA, DPS, sheriff's offices that want to potentially look into this in their own area of jurisdiction, y'all would be primary, or you would call them, or do they have authority to go on to and test as well? I assume DEA probably does, but does DPS?
So I'll answer. So what we've given is pretty broad latitude. So game wardens, people out there in the field, sheriffs, DPS, if they suspect, and there's a difference in height. Hemp grows very tall, almost like a corn stalk, and the other grade of marijuana plants, they stay fairly low. But if there's a suspicion,
Is that from personal knowledge?
that's not personal. My bees don't pollinate hemp. I'm just saying. But I'm told that
Barry
you can
reads a lot.
there's a distinct difference now. Obviously, if you've got fields that are kind of hiding in some of those things, but we've given enforcement those that are out there in those jurisdictions anyway. If they suspect something, they can refer it, so that we got a lot of eyes on the ground.
What is your manpower as an agency to regulate hemp?
Well, right now, of course, we have multitudes of inspectors that'll be cross-trained to go into this, because once again, you're not going to be inspecting
Only
the crop
hemp, yeah.
year-round. So we'll have that. In addition to that, utilizing cross-jurisdiction, so going to the issue with regards to whether it's a jurisdictional issue for law enforcement or whether it's a jurisdictional issue for Department of State Health Services, one of the things I think we're also going to see from the federal guidelines is a cross-reference to how we deal with those issues regarding an illegal crop. Because you have multiple jurisdictions involved here. Not only do you have USDA involved, you have FDA involved, of course. You'll have DEA involved if you have a habitual crop that's an illegal crop. So the guidelines will lay out, I think, many of the concerns even that Senator Rodriguez mentioned with regards to how is this going to be handled. However, that being said, the bill that Chairman Perry has introduced gives broad latitude to allow multiple law enforcement agencies and cross-jurisdictional agencies to be involved. Reality is we're not a law enforcement entity. We're an entity that wants to make sure that the crop's being grown, we know where the crop's being grown, and we can make sure that it's tested when it's harvested.
One final question. Any hemp production that is not a licensed and registered in the state would by definition be illegal? Would any hemp production that is not registered
Yes, sir.
and licensed in the state of Texas would by definition be illegal,
Yes, sir.
correct? Okay. Thank you.
Barry.
Mr. Hunter, I would anticipate, and I think it's been discussed, and I just want to make sure, but we anticipate this going to the Go Texan brand,
Hope so.
to where the majority of the products come off the shelf and the majority of Texas products go on. And I will tell you that the Lieutenant Governor's concern when we were talking, it was some of the legal stuff, the criminal elements of what can happen if it goes awry, but mostly he was wanting quality and consistency in product, and his comment directly to me was, I want to make sure that what consumers are buying is the real deal.
Yes, sir.
And don't mislead the public, so to speak. And because there's a lot of people using this stuff that believe that there's benefits or not, and I'm not here to advocate it for or against those, but I thought that the quality of the product on the shelves that our consumers are purchasing was valid. And if Go Texan label, there's a certification process to get that brand, if you will, and it means a lot.
Yes, sir.
People, I think, in the state discount just how much that really means when you get outside these borders of the state. So can you address kind of what it takes to get to that labeling process to where it would have the Texas brand on it?
Essentially, with regards to the Go Texan product, the first thing is it's mandatory is that it be a product that's either processed or produced here in the state of Texas. And so then we look at where the product came from. We know that with regards to this specific product, specifically with regards to hemp, not only is the product going to be of a quality, but also you have an additional set of testing standards that are going to be applied through DSHS, and that's going to come from FDA. So we know that the key thing is we know that what we grow here in Texas and what we produce here in Texas is going to be a superior product. And that's what we're trying to do with our Go Texan brand, is to make sure that people understand that what we have here is a product that is produced, grown here in Texas. It didn't come from, other states and those types of things. But we're making sure that Texas products are put on Texas shelves, not only here in the state of Texas, but around the world.
I had a guy came into my office, I didn't get to see it, that was wearing a hemp suit yesterday. I don't know if he's in the audience today with a hemp suit, but I want to see it before I leave if he is, so.
All right.
Senator Rodriguez.
Yeah, I had a question. I don't know if it's maybe for Senator Perry or you, Mr. Hunter. I think the senator in his laying out of the bill indicated that this would be one of the strictest or the strictest law in the hemp area across the country, and I was just, in what way is it going to be stricter?
Well, I think it lays out some guidelines with regard certainly to things like the fee structure with regards to how we test those types of things. The good part about it is, Senator Rodriguez, is that as Chairman Perry laid out, the USDA is going to have the ultimate say of whether or not we are growing this crop in the state of Texas. We're going to submit a plan based upon input from stakeholders, legislators such as yourself, and move that forward. The reality of this is the good part, one of the I think important parts of Senator Perry's bill, it does have severability from the standpoint that if the feds dictate to us that you must follow X guidelines, the bill allows us the capability to do that. So from that standpoint, while we are writing, while you've written a bill here that could be enacted and is strictly put in place, could be considered maybe one of the more restrictive pieces of legislation across the country, the reality is that it still allows us the flexibility to follow the federal guidelines as they come out.
Is it stricter in the penalty area where we provide for more heavier penalties than other states do?
Versus some other states, yes, sir. Now, part of this also is that there's a work in progress going on here because many of the states that are currently even producing hemp are going to have to submit another plan. They're not going to be able to continue to operate under the plan they currently have submitted. In addition to that, all those states who have not been growing hemp recently, most of them are in the process or have just recently passed legislation. So you look at places like Florida and other places like that have just now passed legislation. Essentially, you're going to have what looks like every state in the nation having some kind of hemp plan. I think the reality is, and the word that we receive from USDA and our federal partners is that they're going to set out federal guidelines, and they expect every plan that's submitted from every state to follow those federal guidelines. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a couple of questions here. About the seeds, are we licensing, monitoring, controlling the seed end of this also? And traceability between, so we know if you're finding crops that consistently come from the same seed source?
Yes, sir. And so, Mr. Chairman, there's been a great deal of advancement, even recently, with regards to access to seed and how we certify seed. So all seed that comes in is considered certified seed with regards to hemp production. First of all, the hemp producers themselves want the certified seed because it goes back to the guarantee and makes sure that whatever they're growing is actually a hemp product, not a marijuana product. More recently, the biggest hemp production with regards to certified seed has been in Canada. With the removal of or decriminalizing hemp in the United States, we actually have free flow of seed coming in from a certified seed source in Canada. But also you have seed, many of your European countries currently certify hemp production and seed production. So you'll see some seed come in, and until we are actually geared up here in the United States to be able to produce enough seed to serve our own crops, we'll continue to use those sources. The reality is, and this goes to what Chairman Perry and Senator Rodriguez and yourself have talked about as well, is when you look at seed production, the type and seed varieties that we grow here in Texas are going to vary from the valley all the way up to Senator Perry's district. In addition, what we grow is probably going to be different than what they grow in South Dakota or New York or Pennsylvania. So seed varieties will continue to evolve, but the reality is that it will be a certified seed that have to be planted. And before you can access that seed, you still have to have a permit to be able to do it.
We're using federal guidelines on the certification of the seeds, the testing of the seeds.
Currently, under the guidelines that they follow, they are, and we expect that they'll be very similar under the new federal guidelines when they come out. Yes, sir.
Members, any other questions? Resource, we do have some others here. And that's all on resources. And now, how many do we have that want to testify? Just these two?
First and
Huh?
second.
Huh?
It's first and second,
Yeah.
and then the rest of them.
Or 8.
8 total. Rick Hardcastle first.
Okay. Okay, we'll now open this up for public testimony, and we have 8 that want to testify. We'll start with Rick Hardcastle. If you'd come up, please. State your name and who you represent and your position on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Rick Hardcastle, for the record. I'm a registered lobbyist, and I'm here today to testify for myself and my client, Margin PAC, in favor of the Senate substitute to House Bill 1325. Y'all have all heard the senator lay out the testimony that we need this in this state. Texas is the #1 producer of many ag products in this nation. And with hemp moving forward, we need to be the #1 producer of hemp. The Farm Bill, as you heard from Mr. Hunter and others, the Farm Bill states all the criteria that we have to meet to be legal, and it specifically gives the state the authority to destroy the crop, which the USDA has the authority to destroy the crop if they test hot under certain conditions. I understand that this is a new priority in production agriculture and in fiber production and in the supplemental markets, which y'all are all aware of. And there are 42 states that have already started this long, tedious process of setting up to where we abide by the federal law, but we meet our own farm needs and our own agriculture needs. And House Bill 1325 would be a great start. I commend Senator Perry and Chairman King for all the work they've put into this, because I know how tedious this process has been. And on a personal note, I will tell you I've been taking straight hemp oil for the last 2 months, and Senator Perry is my witness. I am not on a walking stick anymore and have lost 90% of the shake in my legs. And the sad part of that statement is we can't grow it and we can't process it in the state. This is jobs.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question. What's the name of that oil you're using? Where can I get it?
From me.
Oh,
I will see you after the hearing.
please do.
Senator Perry.
Representative Hardcastle, good to see you. I don't think you mind me sharing this. I saw you at the first of the session, and it had been a year since we'd seen each other in district. I see you when I do my town halls, and you had digressed substantially from where I'd saw you in the district in less than a few months. And when I saw you the first week of the session, I worried about you. I wasn't sure really you were going to be here in May. And then when I saw you the other day without your cane and the shakes were diminished, and you told me what you're doing, I thought, well, this makes it all worthwhile. But I appreciate your testimony. But you're a living testament to the medical miracles our society grants us. At the same time, you're also a passionate advocate for the unknown, and I thank you for that.
Well, I'm a passionate advocate for agriculture, and I appreciate you saying that, because that particular day that you saw me back in January, you really wanted to send me home. Your staff just wouldn't let you, and so I appreciate y'all having me today, and with that, I'll stand down.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your coming. Thank you for your testimony.
And it's not a drug, it is a supplement.
Okay. All right. Now we'll call up Jeff Lane, Coleman Hemphill, and Hayden Shibley.
Jeff Lane.
Lake, I'm sorry. Okay. Come on up and take a seat. And Hayden, we'll start with you. State your name, who you represent, and your position on the bill, and you'll have 2 minutes.
All right, I'm Hayden Shibley. I'm here testifying in favor of 1325, representing the Circle B Ranch in Childress, Texas. And as a third generation farmer in the state, it's been a struggle keeping that property in our family and keeping it profitable. And, my brothers and I, we see this as really our final lifeline to keeping that land in our family and continuing in the footsteps of my grandfather and my great-grandfather. And, my biggest fear is that if the state of Texas doesn't act now, then, we're going to lose that incentive. And as the crop, commodity stabilizes, then, that revenue potential drops, and, we lose the ability, for a lot of farmers to make that leap and to, continue to make Texas, and as Mr. Hardcastle said, I do believe that with the passing of this, that, Texas will be the #1 producer of hemp in the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Coleman.
Thanks, Senator Hall. My name is Coleman Hemphill, president of the Texas Hemp Industries Association, testifying in favor of HB 1325. As you all know, this is something I've been very diligently pushing for a number of years, and have gotten the chance to talk to really all of the primary academic institutions in the state that I know are all very excited to see this move forward. The association is very committed to best practices and helping provide that education, and really with a focus on traceability, food safety, and good manufacturing practices. Several of the things that I was listening to earlier that I think are very important really does center around testing, and a specific piece of language that was added into this bill centers around high precision liquid chromatography that will allow you to differentiate between Delta 9, Delta 8, THCA, THCV, and about 14 or more different cannabinoids within that plant. In my time in Oregon over the last 9 months, I had visited dozens of different fields all over the state, and of true hemp producers, I never saw anything approach 0.3% Delta 9. Generally is 0.1% or less. Now, there have been some cases in second-generation seeds that were harvested from previous crops that adapted back to a higher THC level, and those seeds sold by different individuals and not representing them as truly a feminized low THC seed, or actually representing them in that way and them not actually being that. So I believe registered seed is going to be of great importance. I do want to differentiate between registered seed and certified seed. Certified seed takes about 3 years to determine. It's going to be based upon the geography of where that plant was grown and the adaptability of that plant over time. And we cannot limit ourselves in seed genetics and impede our ability to compete. You should be able to have COAs for a number of years that show that seed in Kentucky, Colorado, Oregon has been shown to be below 0.3% as a prerequisite, but we should be able to experiment, closely watch that, and test it.
Thank you very much. And Jeff.
Yes.
Real quick.
Okay,
So basically the risk is with the farmer. If they don't have the right seed, they're going to run amok, and it's going to cost them a lot of money. So they have every incentive to find a legitimate seed vendor. But most people don't realize it, but every seed that our agricultural community used has been through a process, and Texas Department of Agriculture makes sure it germinates. That's kind of a given in the real world, that people just think seeds, you put them in, they grow. But there is a process in which we go through to test seeds to make sure germination's correct. Same process here to make sure it does that. I will say a personal shout out for you and your mom.
Thank you.
I would say, I think it's true to say that if it wasn't for the Hemp Hills, Sheila and Coleman, I don't think the hemp bill would be before us today. And that's saying a lot, and there's a lot of people that worked on it, but they were the first voice, at least in my area and in my jurisdiction of control, advocating for hemp, and that's been 4 years in the making. So I will say that I recognize the effort that you guys have had, and thank you for your participation.
If I could add one thing, I think certification should absolutely be encouraged, and in other crops, certification is generally connected to the ability to finance crops and the ability to insure crops. That's going to be based on average yields and the financial feasibility in these areas, which is going to be an ongoing process. And I encourage our Texas farmers to take caution as they start this new crop, understanding that we haven't grown this in 80 years.
Thank you very much. Any other all right, Jeff?
All right. Thank you, Chairman Hall. Thank you, Senators, for having me. My name is Jeff Lake. I actually live in Lexington, Kentucky now, and I'm the founder and president of Elemental Processing, which is a licensed hemp processing company. We've been licensed in Kentucky for the last 3 years, and I'm speaking in favor of House Bill 1325. Our time is brief, so I wanted to get to one point and then answer any questions you may have, and that is, unlike many other crops, it is absolutely imperative that hemp is processed before it goes to market. It's not like a strawberry where you can pick it and put it in a basket and sell it in a store. Whether you're growing hemp for grain, for fiber, or for flour, it needs to be processed before it can be taken to market. So, as every farmer knows, it is pointless to grow a crop unless you have somebody to buy it. And in this case, the buyers of hemp are processors. Our company has recently acquired the 1.2 million square foot former Atlantic Coffee Solutions plant in Houston, Texas. We are in the process of doing the engineering and retrofitting that facility to be the largest hemp processing, if this bill is passed and the rules are passed, which we are very optimistic and hopeful that will happen shortly. We will be able there to process, when fully capacity, over 100 million pounds of hemp a year here in Texas. The economic impact alone for that project, as you may have seen from Mayor Turner's letter the other day, just the build-out process alone is going to cost over $50 million. It is going to have an economic impact of over $100 million. And then once that facility is fully operational, there will be somewhere between 500 and 700 direct jobs at the facility alone, and the regional activity that the jobs will be created will be in excess of 4,000 jobs. That is going to make a positive net economic impact to the state of Texas of over $900 million and probably more than $1 billion. So it's not just the farmers, it's the entire economic impact that goes through the entire industry, and we are fully committed to do that here in Texas.
Thank you very much. Senator Perry.
So you've got experience from Kentucky. You're probably one of the front runners and leads in the country on getting this. Legal crop, genetics testing, and transportation are all things that have concerns that we've tried to address in the bill. Can you kind of go down that checklist fairly quickly on what you see we've done right and where you see some things that we might need to change going forward? But legal crop.
Okay.
And genetics testing, transportation requirements.
Very important, and thank you, Senator. Genetics are everything. Seed breeders are getting better and better, and the entire goal is to breed out THC in the hemp plant. It is, there are getting to be different varieties that are higher in CBD, for example, and other cannabinoids, and less in THC. That is going to continually improve. The way it works in every other state is there's reciprocity between license holders. So in order to get a seed, whether it's from a Texas breeder or anyone else, they have to have a license, first and foremost. You cannot step out of the circle. That's very, very important. Everybody has to go through the background checks. Everybody has to be legitimate. Secondly, you have to prove that those seeds have come from a certified crop, not necessarily national certification, but you have to show certificates of analysis for the plants going back generations as to what the THC potency is. You have to provide those certificates of analysis to the Department of Agriculture, who then has to approve them before you can even bring the seed in. Then the Department of Agriculture accepts those seeds, they can test those seeds, weigh them, assure what they are, then they can be distributed to another licensed grower or processor. So just before you start, you have to go through an entire series of checks, and that's very, very important. The next thing is, as far as transportation goes, this bill is particularly prescriptive in that it requires track and trace from the seed all the way to the final consumer, which is very important. It even calls for QR codes. This is the first law in the country, if passed, that will require that. Some people might think that's a little bit onerous, it's a little bit more expensive, but for transparency and licensing, it shouldn't be a problem for anyone. So the way that works is You have to have a copy of the license of where it's coming from, a copy of the license of where it's going. You have to be able to contact those people to verify that they're legitimate. You have to have your bill of lading and travel manifest that says what it is, who it is, where it's going, and when it's getting there. That's what law enforcement really relies on in the other states, because if they pull over somebody transporting, you give them their state papers, they can call the Department of Agriculture, they can call law enforcement, they can do whatever you want, and if you're non-compliant, you're at risk, you can be arrested, you can lose your product, and as Senator Perry pointed out earlier, you're in trouble. So making sure that you have your transportation documents in order, you're going to see once this really starts happening, everybody complies because nobody wants to get arrested and lose their product, and it's worked very well in the other states. And then the last question, I think, was in regards to testing. Testing is very important. One of the great things about this bill is it allows for third-party testing as long as you're at an ISO-accredited lab. I think that was a brilliant move because a lot of states have trouble. For example, in Kentucky, University of Kentucky has a great lab, but they're inundated. As long as you start registering and licensing high-quality ISO labs, the burden is on the license holders to pay for that, and so that will take a huge burden off of the state as far as testing. Pick good labs, make the license holders pay that, and then the random testing, if you want to do extras. Anybody who is in this industry knows that you can be stopped, you can be searched, you can be tested, anything can happen to you at any time. And that is the way it should be. If you're doing it right, you're going to be fine. I think this bill covers that. It is very strict. I have no problem with that, and I think once you start to see the farmers farm and you start seeing the testing coming back, you're going to be very pleased with what you've done.
Thank you.
So you raised a point in your conversation there that I'm told that, and I think it's true with any product on the shelf, that assuming there's a random inspection, it shows a product that didn't quite measure up to what it expected to be, there'll be a URL, a barcode that can trace that back to its origination of where it came from, all the way back to the grower. So that we pretty much have locked up the cycle to where if it gets to the shelf, consumer buys it, we check it, it's not right, we'll know who grew it and where it came from. So I think we've locked up the doors as best we can.
Yeah, no doubt.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, panel. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate your testimony.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senators.
We'll continue with the family here. Sheila Hemphill, Sean Hauser, and Jeff Williams. Sean, we'll start with you. 2 minutes, tell us your name and who you represent and your position on the bill.
My name is Sean Hauser. I'm an attorney in Denver specializing in hemp law, here representing myself and the American Hemp Campaign. And I work with businesses as well as state and local governments to ensure regulation of hemp as an agricultural commodity and develop responsible regulations like Texas is today. I'm also from Austin, and excited to see Texas finally join the rest of the country in allowing hemp as an agricultural commodity. I'm here to testify in support of the bill and really to be a resource and speak to the fact that I think this is a really great bill. I've seen the bills in most other states, and I think this is a really responsible bill. It ensures that Texas farmers can grow hemp like most other farmers in the country. Following this legislative session, will likely be one of the last handful of states not to have a hemp plan, and most farmers in other states are realizing that they can grow hemp and make $800 to $7,000 an acre, and for struggling farmers, this is I think, like the gentleman said earlier, potentially a lifeline. And I think Texas, with the bill it has in front of it, can really set a model for responsible regulation of consumable products. The fact is that hemp is federally legal now as an agricultural crop. It is allowed to be sold in products. The FDA has regulatory authority. It's currently in the process of further determining regulations governing hemp ingredients and hemp products, but we can't rely on limited federal resources to ensure the public safety of Texans. And with the HB 1325, we really have truth in labeling, robust quality and safety regulations, really responsible, thorough testing regulations, and this is a great bill.
Thank you very much. Now, you say you are for the bill.
Yes.
Because you registered on the bill. So you'd like me to change your card?
Yes, please.
As for? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Jeff.
Chairman Hall, Senators, appreciate the time taken to hear us testify on behalf of the substitute of House Bill 1325 in favor of it. I do represent Clayton Williams Farms and Ranches. I'm a third-generation farmer, fourth-generation rancher, and I am board director of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and chairman of the U.S. Hemp Farm Alliance.
And state your name for
Jeff Williams. Okay. Even though we're not allowed to grow it, I've been real involved around the U.S. with the different organizations. They decided to put me as chairman of the Farm Roundtable because I am a farmer. And I see this as more of a farmer's right to grow. And I am Go Texan, Go U.S. products. I just assume my wife and I actually prefer to buy anything made in the United States, not outside. And basically in Texas as well. And I think it's another crop that we really need. I also represent lots of other farmers that are having issues. We cannot produce cotton, corn at current commodity prices and make money. Those are the facts.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sheila.
My name is Sheila Hemphill, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Hemp Industries Association. I would describe myself as a passionate advocate for rural Texas, which began in 2003.
I would too.
Chasing the tourism industry, and there's only so much you can do with pot plants and logos. So when I became acquainted with hemp in 2005, I went, this is the crop that can help revitalize our rural economies. And since then, over the hundreds of phone calls I've received of people wanting to invest in Texas, wanting to know where these manufacturing facilities are, these processing facilities, where you're going to see millions of dollars pumped into our rural communities. I'm married to a sixth-generation rancher, and myself grew up on a ranch, and we've lived through the demise of rural Texas. I would like to direct you to the document you have. In here, there's some facts about hemp. We've been able to have the products in the state for years. They've just been grown predominantly out of our nation, outside of our nation, or definitely outside of our state. So we need to get those products grown by our farmers. Currently, 43 states can grow hemp, so Texas is a little behind the curve, and we don't like being behind anybody for any reason. It can be grown in cotton, corn, and wheat regions with conventional equipment based upon the different varieties of seed, fiber, grain. Thank you. It requires half the growing season as cotton, so therefore it takes half as much water. Not that it doesn't need water, it just grows much faster. 6 times less water than sugarcane. Currently, there aren't any herbicides or pesticides acceptable, approved for it, so I'm sure that would come as needed. So the seed products on the left, you can see what we can do with it. From the seed, you get 3% protein, which is highly digestible. You get a nearly perfect ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. The oil from the seed is known as seed oil, which would be used on your salad. And the differentiation between that and CBD oil is CBD is more like an essential oil like lavender or peppermint.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would add one thing, that Oklahoma's beat us to the punch.
Thank you. Bob Reed. And is there anyone else that'd like to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1325? State your name, who you represent, A position on the bill.
Excuse me. Good morning, Chairman Hall.
Move the microphone around in front. Very good. Thank
better?
you. That's better.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Chairman Hall and members of the committee. My name is Bob Reed. I'm here on behalf of myself and Texas Farm Bureau in support of the committee substitute of House of HB 1325. I live in Bay City on the Gulf Coast where I grow rice, corn, cotton, and milo. Texas Farm Bureau's policy supports legalizing hemp production in Texas. Since it's a quick-growing crop, it's especially appealing to Texas farmers because we can include it in our crop rotations as a way to increase revenue and diversify our operations. We think there should be a promising future for Texas farmers in hemp. Parts of Texas would be optimal for production, and there's massive variety of producers that can massive variety of products, that can be produced from the crop due to its impressive composition. The automotive, construction materials, food and beverages, furniture, paper, cosmetics, recycling, textiles are all markets that utilize hemp. We're encouraged by the processors ready to invest in the processing a Texas-grown product. There's already a variety of trusted retailers who've been selling hemp products in Texas for years, and many others who are interested in selling the high-demand CBD oil. All we're lacking is the certainty that this bill provides to be able to grow and process a safe and high-quality Texas crop. We think it's reasonable to have the ability to grow as producers what we have the ability to buy as consumers. Now that hemp production is legalized through the 2018 Farm Bill, we're afraid that if we don't act now, that Texas will be left standing at the starting line and leaving it hard for us to catch up. Most other states have already enacted pilot programs and are passing similar legislation to legalize full production. Let's not create a double standard for Texas farmers by keeping us shut out of an industry while allowing out-of-state producers to flood our markets. Bottom line, HB 1325 removes the double standard barrier to the entry and ensures that products sold on store shelves are safe. The free market will take care of the rest. After all, who better to provide safe, high-quality products to Texas consumers than Texas farmers and suppliers? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Members, any questions? Anyone else care to, thank you for your testimony, appreciate you coming. Anyone else care to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1325? Did you want to testify? I see a hand going up. Did you fill out a card? What's your name? Oh, it's because you checked the box you were registering but did not want to testify. But that's all right. Come on up. That's okay. I'll change that for you.
You'll have to forgive me. Canadians, we sometimes make those mistakes.
Is that a hemp suit?
This is not. The
That's
one I had
not.
on
The
yesterday.
one yesterday?
Thank
All
you
right.
for asking.
Okay. State your name, who you represent, position on the bill, and you have 2 minutes.
Yes, Senator Hall, Senators, thank you for having me. My name is Jeff Whaling. I am the chairman of the National Hemp Association, which is the largest advocacy group based in Washington, D.C. And on behalf of our 50,000 members, farmers, manufacturers, producers, I'm here to fully support your legislation. I thank you for moving this forward. I am in a unique position given that I'm a dual citizen. I worked for the Canadian Prime Minister that introduced hemp to our landscape some 26 years ago. And as you may know, there's more than $600 million worth of that seed product coming into the United States annually. As a member representing Pennsylvania in the National Farmers Union Board, I think those jobs need to be here for American farmers. So we have moved forward over the last number of years to work with states and with Congress to make sure that that opportunity was here. Obviously, you know, I stand on the shoulders of many of the people that are behind me who have been dedicated advocates to move this legislation forward. It's taken 20 years for many, but we're here today. The opportunity is immense. I know a lot of discussion has been about the hemp oil extract from the plant, but that represents 2% of this plant's potential. We have that other 98% to really look at, so we can maximize the opportunities for construction products, for clothing products, for products that can be distributed across the country. There is a huge demand generationally. This is the first time to introduce a crop for everyone to participate in and for farmers to be on the ground floor to make it happen. So I thank you.
Members, any questions? Just one. You talk about the many other products besides the oil. That seems to be the main focus of most of the conversation today. What are some of the other products, and how do they compare in value per acre as a product, or is it in addition to the oil?
So I certainly am an advocate for what I call a multi-purpose crop. All hemp contains cannabidiol, may not have high percentages of it, but it contains cannabidiol. So if a farmer was to grow lots of acreage, not only do they get the opportunity to sell the seed oil, and the refined seed, they're able to take the crop and break it into its raw components with fiber and the woody component. Each one of those have an opportunity. The fiber, which used to be used to make rope, today is replacing carbon fiber in the automotive industry. It's lighter, it's sustainable, it's as strong as steel. Every single European manufacturer today uses hemp in one way or another. That same fiber has the same properties as copper. It carries an electric current. We need to really further that research, but the automotive industry is already using it. The opportunities to research and create a whole new industry are in front of us, and I can say that most things in this room, including the paint on that painting, could be produced from hemp.
Now, is this the crop? Can it be split into supporting multiple products, or do they have to choose between the products?
No, depending on what approach you want to take. I'm advocating now, since we need to go slow and steady to rebuild this industry, I'm advocating for what I call hemp industrial parks that are really an ecosystem, so that we work with farmers to grow the crop, teach them how to grow this crop, harvest that crop. There is no harvesting equipment that can successfully go through a field to get a crop that's 22 feet tall. So we need to develop that, bring that equipment here to the United States, develop it further for the U.S. market, and then start to train farmers on how to use it. Take that raw material, take the seed and take it into the nutritional side, take the fiber and start to develop it for clothing and weaving and bioplastics, take that woody core and divide them out into other industries so that they can develop end products. And by estimates, 25,000 to 50,000 products.
All right, thank you very much. Senator Rodriguez.
All right, I'm interested in the 2% oil.
Yes, sir.
Even though there's all these other uses, are there different grades in terms of strength or effectiveness within the oil based on the seeds that they come from?
So we don't know the exact answer to that, but yes, there are different concentrates. There are different varietals of hemp that will grow a different percentage of cannabidiol or CBD. But we really need to go through the process. You know, we're in a unique position where a product has been approved to go into the marketplace that has not gone through a regulatory review. That is what the 2014 Farm Bill allowed states to do, but now the 2018 Farm Bill gives the FDA and the USDA the opportunity to introduce regulations. So they will be looking at this. We need to know the answers as to how CBD can benefit society. Anecdotally, we know that it's helping. I am one of the founders of the largest CBD advocacy group. I started in trying to help families with epilepsy, and certainly CBD is there. But we now have an opportunity to research that. We've not been able to research hemp. Universities have not wanted to do it because they were afraid of losing federal funding, even though it was legally allowed to be done. But we need to know all of those answers, and I think time will tell as we move forward. Now that the Farm Bill has been passed, there are more than 18 universities, including Texas A&M, who want to research CBD.
Thank you. Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Pleasure to
you
be
coming.
here.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Dan, I've got a couple other questions if you come back up just for a minute. What do you see as a timeline for moving forward?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, good question. So immediately upon passage and being optimistic, you're signing by the governor, of course.
State your name again, please.
Sorry, Dan Hunter, Texas Department of Agriculture Assistant Commissioner. So what we're anticipating from USDA, they've told us that they're going to send down federal guidelines sometime in the fall, hopefully earlier fall, because the sooner the better for us, because it allows us more time to go ahead and promulgate our rules, make sure we're following not only what the legislation that you pass here does, but also to make sure we're following federal guidelines. So what we're looking at is hopefully to be able to have a permitting process in place before the end of the year, because the reality is here in Texas, we'll start growing early in the year next year if the crop's available and seeds available, because in the valley they'll start planting similar to when they plant cotton. So you're talking late January, February part, and then of course all the way into the spring with the other crops. So the reality is that we'd like to see this put in place, give us time to promulgate rules, and hopefully have a permitting process in place before the end of the year.
You're looking at about what time frame for growing? 3 months?
Oh, as far as from the crop, yes, sir, that's about right. Depending upon the varieties that you use, that's correct.
And what about in the retail end? How is this going to change? Because I've seen the products in some health food stores in some places. Is that going to change? A retailer is going to be regulated and licensed under this also?
I think you'll see those guidelines come down from FDA as well. Currently, they are allowed to have those to sell. Department of State Health Services about a month ago took it off their Schedule 1 list with regards to being able to be sold. So it's currently being sold here in the state of Texas. The question is whether or not we're going to be able to grow it here in the state of Texas.
Okay, is that, because I've read a couple of articles that said it's questionable whether that's even legal or not. Not being enforced, but question about whether it's legal or not.
Yes, sir. Initially, because of the way that the interstate commerce clauses are written, it allows it to, because it's no longer on the schedule list of illegal products. In the state of Texas, what we have to do is decriminalize the growing of it. What we have done here in the state of Texas and Department of State Health Services has done is they've taken it off their Schedule 1 list to allow it to be sold. Early on, prior to them doing that, there were some law enforcement jurisdictions which were looking at this and debating whether or not this was a legal product to be sold.
But you're saying it is legal to be sold
That's
now?
our understanding.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. One more time. Anybody else want to testify on, for, or against? House Bill 1325, we have several cards here who are all testifying, are registered for the bill but do not want to testify. We'll read those into the record. And we have two that have registered that do not want to testify. They are on the bill, and we'll read those into the record. If there's no objection, so moved. All right, we're going to hold this bill pending. Okay, public testimony is now closed, and we'll leave this bill pending.